Hi guys, and welcome to Boring History Relaxing. Tonight we step through a heavy wooden door and into a medieval castle just as the sun slips away and the cold rises from the stone like a living thing. You can almost feel it before you see anything. The floor chills the soles of your boots. The walls seem to breathe out yesterday's frost. Somewhere deep inside a fire crackles, but it sounds small and tired, like it already knows it will not win this fight. This is one of those nights where honestly you probably won't survive this without a plan. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you are settling in, tell me where you are listening from and what time it is there. Now dim the lights and let yourself drift forward into the story. You are inside the castle now, and the first thing you learn is that stone does not forget the cold. During the day, the sun barely warms it. At night, it releases what little heat it has and then pulls warmth from everything it touches. A mainstream historical fact that still surprises people today is that medieval castles were often colder inside than simple wooden houses because thick stone walls absorbed moisture and chill and held onto them stubbornly through the night. You stand still for a moment listening. The soundscape is muted. Footsteps echo too long. Your breath feels louder than it should. As evening deepens, the temperature drops quickly. There is no gentle transition. One moment you are tolerably uncomfortable. The next you feel the cold climbing your legs, settling into your joints, creeping toward your chest. You pull your cloak tighter, already aware that this garment will be your blanket, your coat, and sometimes your pillow. People did not change into special nightwear here. You sleep in what you wear, adding layers until movement becomes awkward. Linen against skin wool over that, perhaps a fur if you're lucky or important. The castle itself feels enormous and hollow. High ceilings trap smoke but not warmth. Corridors stretch long and straight, inviting drafts to wander freely. Air slides through arrow slits under doors and along stairwells like a curious animal. Historians still argue whether medieval builders understood airflow well enough to manage warmth intentionally, or whether these drafts were simply an accepted consequence of defense-focused design. Either way, you feel the result directly on your face and hands. Somewhere nearby, servants are already preparing for the night. You hear the scrape of iron tools against hearthstone. Fires are fed carefully because fuel is precious. Wood must last until morning. In some castles, charcoal or peat supplements firewood, each with its own smell and smoke. The air grows heavier as flames burn a mix of warmth and irritation that makes your eyes sting slightly. Candles add small pockets of heat, but mostly they add shadows. The walls flicker, and the tapestries sway gently as if breathing. You brush your fingers against one of those tapestries as you pass. It is thicker than it looks, layered, wool stitched with scenes of hunts, saints, or battles. A quirky tidbit often mentioned in castle accounts is that these wall hangings were not just decorative. They acted like primitive insulation, trapping a thin layer of warmer air against the stone and making rooms marginally more bearable. Marginally is doing a lot of work here. Night routines begin to settle in. Doors are barred. Heavy wooden shutters close over windows. The castle shrinks inward, concentrating its life around a few heated rooms. If you are of high status, you are guided toward a chamber that will at least pretend to be warm. If you are not, you follow others into shared spaces where bodies matter more than walls. The idea of privacy fades quickly when warmth is at stake. You sit down for a moment, feeling the bench steal heat through your clothing. Stonewood, even metal buckles feel hostile now. The smell of smoke clings to everything. It settles into hair, fabric, and skin. This scent will follow you to sleep and into your dreams. Outside, the wind rises slightly and you hear it test the walls. It whistles faintly through gaps. You cannot see a reminder that the world beyond the castle is colder still. As you prepare for sleep, you notice how the castle changes its voice. Daytime clatter gives way to softer sounds. A cough echoes from down the hall. Someone mutters a prayer. A guard's boots cross a courtyard, each step ringing sharply before fading. The fire pops, then settles. You stretch out your hands toward it, careful not to get too close. Burns are common in winter, a small but constant risk when everyone crowds the same heat source. Scholars continue to debate how medieval people mentally framed this cold. Some argue it was seen as a test of endurance, even virtue. Others suggest it was simply an unavoidable condition of life accepted without much commentary. Standing here, you suspect it was both. Complaining does not make the night warmer, but neither does pretending the cold is noble. You finally make your way to where you will sleep. The bed, if it can be called that, is a wooden frame filled with straw or feathers covered by rough blankets. The fabric smells faintly of animals and old dust. You lie down carefully, arranging your cloak over your legs and tucking it under your feet. The cold presses in from below, relentless. Floors steal heat faster than air ever could. As you settle, you become aware of how still you must remain. Moving too much lets warmth escape. You curl slightly instinctively, conserving heat. Your breath slows. The sounds of the castle fade into a low, steady hum. Somewhere a fire is being banked for the night embers nudged into a careful pile meant to last until dawn. This is how the first castle night teaches you its rules. Stone dominates. Fire helps but never conquers. Clothing becomes bedding. And warmth, always temporary, is something you gather and guard rather than expect. You let your eyes close knowing the night has only just begun, and the cold will be your closest companion until morning. You do not wake so much as resurface, drifting up from a shallow sleep where the cold never quite lets go of you. The fire has settled into a dull glow, and the room feels larger now that the flames are no longer dancing. In the dim light, you notice the fireplace properly for the first time, and it becomes clear why it never truly wins against the night. Medieval fireplaces look impressive at a glance. They are wide and tall, framed by heavy stone, sometimes carved with symbols meant to project power and stability. But as you sit closer, you feel the truth of them. Most of the heat rushes straight upward, pulled into the chimney and lost to the sky. A mainstream historical fact quietly acknowledged in household accounts is that open hearths were wildly inefficient, often warming only the few feet directly in front of them. You shift your position slightly and immediately feel the temperature drop. You extend your hands again, palms tingling as warmth reaches them briefly. Your face feels almost comfortable, but your back remains cold like you are split between two seasons. People learn to rotate slowly near fires, turning like bread on a spit, trying to share the limited heat across the body. This awkward dance is familiar, practiced, and strangely communal. No one comments on it. Everyone understands. Smoke is part of the bargain. Without proper flues or sealed chimneys, it leaks back into the room. It stings your eyes and scratches your throat. You inhale, shallowly adjusting. Over time, people here become accustomed to it, though. Coughing fits are common. A quirky tidbit recorded in some medieval letters mentions that chronic red eyes and sore throats were considered normal winter conditions, as expected as cold fingers or numb toes. The fire crackles softly, then collapses inward as another piece of wood gives way. A servant nearby nudges it carefully, not adding or fuel, just rearranging embers to stretch their life. Fuel management is an art form. Too much wood and you waste precious supplies. Too little, and the fire dies long before dawn. The balance is delicate and watched closely. You glance toward the chimney, imagining warmth trapped there just out of reach. Chimneys themselves are still a relatively recent innovation in much of medieval Europe. Before they became widespread, smoke simply filled rooms and escaped wherever it could. Even now, their promise often exceeds their performance. Historians still argue whether the introduction of chimneys significantly improved everyday comfort, or whether their main advantage was reducing smoke rather than increasing warmth. From where you sit, the improvement feels modest at best. As the night deepens, the room empties slightly. Some people retreat to beds closer to the hearth. Others head to different chambers, hoping smaller spaces might retain heat better. Large halls lose warmth quickly once activity fades. You can feel it draining away, slipping upward and outward, leaving behind a still biting cold. You pull your cloak tighter and tuck your feet beneath you. Extremities suffer first, fingers stiffen, toes ache dully, then begin to feel distant, like they belong to someone else. People learn to recognize this progression early. You wiggle your toes discreetly, grateful for movement, even if it lets a little warmth escape. The firelight throws long shadows across the walls. Tapestries absorb some of the glow, softening it, while bare stone reflects it harshly. You notice how uneven the room feels. One corner is almost tolerable. Another feels like standing outdoors. Castles are not designed for comfort. They are designed to impress, to intimidate, and to survive attack. Warmth is an afterthought negotiated nightly rather than guaranteed. Someone nearby murmurs a complaint quickly swallowed by the crackle of embers. Complaining does not change anything and everyone knows it. Instead, people share small strategies. Sit closer. Trade places. Wrap an extra blanket around your shoulders if you can spare it. These quiet acts of cooperation matter more than any architectural feature. You begin to understand why people favoured enclosed beds and shared sleeping arrangements. Open spaces leak heat mercilessly. The fireplace, for all its drama, feels like a weak heart pumping warmth that cannot reach the body's edges. You lean forward again, feeling heat brush your knuckles, then fade. As hours pass, the fire dims further. The room grows quieter, heavier. You hear the faint sound of a wind outside slipping around towers and along walls. Each gust steals a little more warmth through unseen gaps. Inside the fire sighs softly, its energy nearly spent. Scholars sometimes debate whether medieval people slept more lightly because of cold. Lying here half awake, you suspect the answer is yes. Deep sleep requires comfort, and comfort is rare on nights like this. You drift, wake, adjust, drift again, always aware of the temperature pressing against your skin. Eventually the fire becomes a memory more than a presence. The hearth holds only glowing embers radiating a weak, steady warmth that barely reaches you. You turn away, curling inward, conserving heat the only way left to you. The castle settles into its coldest hours, and you accept what the fireplace cannot give. Here warmth is borrowed, not owned. Fires help, but they never conquer the night. Understanding that truth is part of surviving until morning, and as your breathing slows, you let that lesson sink in, even as the cold continues its quiet work. You shift in your sleep, not fully awake, but aware of movement in the air. It is subtle at first, a thin ribbon of cold brushing your cheek, then slipping away. Drafts announce themselves this way, never loudly, never all at once. They test you, circle you, then settle in as if they have always belonged here. Castles are full of hidden pathways for wind. Arrow slits that look narrow from outside widen within the walls. Doorways sag with age, leaving uneven gaps along their frames. Stairwells act like chimneys in reverse, pulling cold air downward through the structure. A mainstream historical fact often overlooked is that medieval castles functioned almost like open systems, constantly exchanging indoor air with the outside environment. You feel this exchange in every exposed patch of skin. You pull your cloak higher, covering your mouth and nose, breathing through wool that smells faintly of lanolin and smoke. The fabric helps a little, trapping warmth from each exhale, but the air around you keeps moving. It slides along the floor, rises near the walls, then curls back toward the center of the room. No matter where you position yourself, the draft eventually finds you. Someone nearby mutters in their sleep, rolling closer to the fire's dying glow. You consider doing the same, but hesitate. Movement costs warmth. The moment you shift, cold rushes in to replace what your body has built up. You wait listening, feeling the slow seep of chill through your clothing. Medieval builders knew how to construct walls that could withstand siege engines and fire, but stopping wind was another matter entirely. Doors were thick but rarely sealed. Leather strips and wooden thresholds helped, but gaps remained. Historians still argue whether these drafts were fully accepted as inevitable, or whether people saw them as flaws simply tolerated because there was no better solution at the time. From your perspective, intention hardly matters. The result feels the same on your skin. You become acutely aware of your ears and fingers. They seem to catch the cold first sensitive and exposed. You tuck your hands beneath your arms, pressing them against your sides, borrowing warmth from your core. This posture is instinctive, almost universal, and you notice others around you doing the same. Bodies curl inward like sleeping animals, minimizing surface area, conserving what little heat they generate. A quirky tidbit appears in some household records mentioning the use of rolled cloth or spare garments stuffed into door gaps at night. This makeshift attempt to block drafts rarely worked for long. Wind found new paths slipping through cracks in stone or along ceiling beams. Still, people tried because even a slight reduction in airflow could mean the difference between numbness and tolerable discomfort. The sound of the castle changes as drafts move through it. You hear faint whistles, soft sighs, and low moans as air squeezes through narrow space. It can be unsettling, especially when half asleep. Some people whisper that the castle itself is breathing restless in the cold. You know better, but in the dark, logic does not always win. You adjust, again turning your back to the wall, hoping the stone might block the worst of it. Instead, the cold seems to radiate through your clothing, a slow, steady drain. Stone walls chilled all day release cold inward at night, compounding the effect of moving air. You press closer to others, feeling the shared warmth briefly push back. Sleep comes in fragments. You drift off, then wake as a new draft finds a fresh path. Each time your body stiffens slightly, reacting before your mind does, you learn to recognize patterns. A gust from the corridor means someone opened a door earlier and left it imperfectly closed. A chill from above suggests air sliding down a stairwell. Awareness becomes survival. Scholars sometimes debate whether medieval people adapted physiologically to these conditions over generations. Sitting here shivering lightly, you suspect adaptation was more about behavior than biology. You learn where to sit, how to sleep, when to move. You accept that complete warmth is impossible and aim instead for balance. As the night deepens, the drafts grow more insistent. Outside, the temperature continues to fall, pulling indoor air outward like a slow leak. Inside, you curl tighter, your breath shallow and rhythmic. The cold never disappears, but it becomes predictable, almost familiar. By now you understand that there is no perfect spot in a castle at night. Every space is compromised. Fire warms one side and chills the other. Walls block wind in one direction and funnel it in another. Drafts are the castle's quiet companions, always present, always patient. Eventually exhaustion outweighs discomfort. Your body settles into a tense truce with the cold. Muscles relax just enough. Breathing slows. The drafts continue their invisible journeys, but you stop tracking them consciously. You slip into another shallow sleep, knowing that when you wake again the air will still be moving, still searching, still reminding you that inside a medieval castle the cold is never fully shut out. You wake again without opening your eyes, aware first of pressure rather than cold. Fabric presses against your skin in layers, stiff in places, soft in others. This is not discomfort exactly, it is weight. You're wrapped in yourself, dressed as if ready to walk out into the night, even though you are lying still. Inside a medieval castle, sleeping fully clothed is not a habit. It is instinct. You shift slightly and feel how every layer matters. Linen clings closest to your body, thin but familiar. Over it, wool traps warmth unevenly, holding heat where it bunches and letting it escape where it stretches. If you are fortunate, there is fur somewhere in the mix, heavy and faintly animal-scented. Not luxury fur necessarily. Sometimes it is just sheepskin worn smooth by years of use. Period household accounts consistently show that night clothing was simply day clothing worn longer, thicker, and with more care. You keep your belt on. Not for modesty, but because it keeps layers from riding up as you sleep. Loose fabric means gaps, and gaps invite cold. Shoes might stay on as well, especially if the floor nearby is bare stone. Removing them feels risky. You imagine the chill creeping up through your feet and decide against it. Many people sleep this way, boots included, curled awkwardly but warmer for it. As you lie there, you become aware of how carefully you arranged yourself before sleep. Cloak tucked under your legs, sleeves pulled over hands, hood drawn low framing your face so only your nose and mouth remain exposed. Breath warms the wool with each exhale. It is not comfortable in a modern sense, but it is effective. One small but telling detail from medieval inventories mentions garments labelled specifically as winter wear, thicker versions of everyday clothing rather than separate night attire. These pieces show signs of heavy use and repair, suggesting they served double duty as both clothing and bedding. You feel that truth now. The idea of changing into something lighter before sleep seems laughable here. You try to stretch your legs and immediately regret it. Cold rushes in where fabric loosens. Your muscles tense reflexively and you pull back into yourself, restoring the fragile balance of warmth you had built. This is how sleep works here. Not deep or sprawling, but contained. Compact, protective. There is still no full agreement among modern historians on whether people undressed at all during winter nights in castles or whether some removed outer layers once settled. The evidence points in multiple directions, but lying here you understand why many chose to keep everything on. Removing clothing is an act of confidence in warmth, and confidence is in short supply. Nearby, someone shifts and lets out a quiet sigh. You hear the rasp of wool against wool, the sound of fabric sliding rather than skin. Everyone is bundled. Everyone looks vaguely shapeless in the low-light human outlines softened by layers. The castle at night feels less like a place of individuals and more like a collection of breathing forms conserving heat together. You notice how your neck feels exposed despite everything. You tuck your chin down, instinctively pressing it toward your chest. This small movement brings immediate relief. Medieval people learned these adjustments early. How to curl, how to fold, how to sleep in ways that look uncomfortable but feel survivable. There is a faint smell of sweat mixed with smoke and old fabric. It is not unpleasant, it is familiar. Clothes are not washed often in winter. Water is cold, fires are reserved for cooking and survival, and damp garments can be dangerous if they never fully dry. Wearing the same layers night after night is common. You accept the scent as part of the environment like stone or ash. Scholars remain divided on how much layered clothing contributed to long-term health. Some argue it prevented illness by maintaining core warmth. Others point out that constant wear of damp or dirty fabric may have caused skin problems and infections. Lying here, you focus only on the immediate benefit. You're warmer than you would be otherwise, and that's enough. You adjust your cloak again, pulling it tighter across your shoulders. The weight is comforting now. It presses you into stillness. Outside, the wind continues its work, but you feel it less sharply. Layers buffer, sound as well as cold. The castle seems quieter, more distant. Sleep drifts closer. Not the deep sinking sleep of a warm bed, but a floating state where awareness fades gradually. You're aware of your breathing slow and deliberate. Each breath warms the air inside your clothing before escaping. Each exhale is a small act of resistance against the cold. A lesser-known practice mentioned in some chronicles describes people sleeping with their heads covered, almost entirely leaving only a narrow opening to breathe. Modern readers often find this strange, but here it makes sense. Heat rises. Keeping it close matters. You pull your hood a little lower, careful not to block your breath. You think briefly about how strange this would feel to someone from your own time. Sleeping dress confined layered like this. But the thought passes quickly. Context changes everything. Here this is normal, sensible, even comforting. As the night stretches on, your body settles into acceptance. Muscles unclench. The urge to move fades. You're wrapped in fabric and habit, protected not by architecture or fire, but by what you wear and how you use it. Inside these walls, clothing is shelter, and tonight it is the reason you sleep at all. You sink a little deeper as the bedding shifts beneath you, producing a soft, dry rustle that sounds almost like grass stirred by wind. That sound comes from straw packed tightly inside a rough mattress sack that has long since lost any uniform shape. This is what supports you tonight. Not springs, not feathers arranged neatly, just plant stalks gathered, dried, and replaced when they collapse into dust. Straw mattresses are common across castles, especially for servants, guards, and anyone outside the highest ranks. Written household roles from the period make it clear that straw was considered practical, affordable, and warmed tallow when layered thickly. The hollow stalks trap air, offering insulation from the stone below. You can feel that benefit immediately. The cold still rises, but more slowly dulled by the cushion beneath you. You adjust your weight and feel the mattress respond unevenly. Some areas are firm, others dip where straw has broken down over time. You make a mental note to avoid the thinnest spots. Sleeping well here is partly about learning the terrain beneath you, just as much as the air around you. In wealthier chambers, the mattress might be stuffed with feathers instead. Goose down if supplies allow, though it tends to shift and clump. Feathers feel softer, warmer at first, but they compress under weight and lose insulation as the night goes on. There is no universal agreement among modern researchers on which filling performed better in prolonged cold. Some argue straw maintained insulation longer. Others suggest feathers offered superior warmth when well maintained. Lying here, you suspect both had drawbacks that only patience could solve. There is another reality to bedding that you cannot ignore for long. Movement stirs something small and alive. A faint itch touches your ankle, then disappears. You freeze, hoping it was nothing. Unfortunately, castle bedding often hosts more than straw or feathers. Fleas, lice, and other tiny companions are common, especially in winter, when people cluster together and wash less frequently. One lesser-known detail from medieval household advice texts recommends scattering certain herbs like lavender or wormwood into bedding to discourage pests. Whether this worked consistently remains unclear, but the practice was common enough to be noted repeatedly. You catch a faint herbal scent now mixed with dust and old fabric, and wonder if it is doing anything at all. You resist the urge to scratch. Scratching leads to movement. Movement lets in cold boards. This trade-off is constant. Comfort battles warmth, and warmth usually wins. You tuck your feet closer together, minimizing exposed skin. Over time, you learn which sensations can be ignored and which demand attention. Nearby, someone shifts and mutters softly, brushing straw against straw. The sound is oddly soothing. It reminds you that you're not alone in this experience. Everyone here shares the same compromises: warmth over cleanliness, stillness over ease, endurance over comfort. Scholars remain divided on how much medieval people truly suffered from bedding-related pests versus how much modern imaginations exaggerate the problem. Some records suggest infestations were seasonal and managed through regular replacement of straw. Others paint a harsher picture. Lying here, you suspect the truth sits somewhere in between. Some nights are better, some are worse. Tonight is tolerable. You turn carefully onto your side, curling slightly. The straw shifts again, redistributing under your weight. You feel a pocket of warmth form beneath you, slowly building as your body heat is trapped. This is the reward for patience. Stay still long enough and the bed begins to cooperate. The smell of the mattress becomes more noticeable as the night deepens. Dry grass, dust, a faint animal note from nearby, hides and wool. It is not unpleasant, just earthy. The scent blends with smoke from the hearth and the ever-present smell of stone. These layers of smell define the castle at night more than sight ever could. Your breathing evens out again. The earlier itch fades into memory. Exhaustion smooths the edges of discomfort. The mattress creaks softly as someone nearby resettles, then stillness returns. There is no illusion here. This bed is not meant to cradle you. It is meant to separate you from the floor and slow the cold, and in that narrow purpose it succeeds. The stone beneath you feels distant now, its chill dulled by straw fabric and your own accumulated warmth. As your eyes close again, you realize that survival in a medieval castle is built from many small defenses. A layer here, a habit there. None are perfect, but together they hold back the night just enough. The straw beneath you, imperfect and alive with history, becomes one more quiet ally as you drift towards sleep once more. You become aware of the walls even with your eyes closed. They are close looming, heavy with presence. When you finally open your eyes again, the firelight is low and amber, barely strong enough to reach the far corners of the room. In that dimness, the tapestries lining the walls feel less like decoration and more like silent guardians hanging thick and patient between you and the stone. You rise carefully and step closer to one, letting your fingers brush the surface. The fabric is rough but dense, layered with years of stitching and repair. Scenes of hunting dogs and stylized trees run across it, the colours muted by smoke and age. Surviving castle inventories consistently note that tapestries were valued not only for status and storytelling, but for their practical ability to soften rooms that would otherwise feel brutally exposed. When you stand near the wall without the tapestry, the cold is immediate. It seeps forward, a steady breath stealing presence. When you move back behind the hanging, the difference is subtle but real. The air feels less sharp. Sound dulls slightly. Your shoulders relax without you consciously deciding to let them. These wall hangings act as barriers, trapping pockets of warmer air between fabric and stone. They also absorb moisture, which matters more than you might expect. Damp stone pulls heat faster than dry surfaces. By creating even a thin buffer, tapestries slow that exchange. You would not call it warm, but it is survivable, and in a castle at night, survivable is the goal. There is still debate among modern scholars about how intentionally tapestries were used for insulation rather than display. Some argue warmth was a welcome side effect rather than the main purpose. Others point to the sheer number of hangings in private chambers as evidence that comfort played a larger role than art historians once assumed. Standing here pressed close to wool and thread, you suspect the truth is practical. If something helps you keep using it, whatever the original intention. You settle back down with the tapestry at your back, positioning yourself so the fabric shields you from the coldest part of the wall. Others do the same. Beds are placed strategically, not centered for beauty, but tucked where drafts are weakest and hangings thickest. Over time, people learn which walls breathe cold hardest and which feel marginally kinder. A small detail mentioned in household records describes tapestries being moved seasonally, hung thicker in winter and stored or rearranged in warmer months. This quiet adjustment suggests a lived understanding of their value beyond decoration. You imagine servants wrestling these heavy textiles into place as temperatures drop, preparing rooms for nights like this. As you lie there, the tapestry shifts slightly with the movement of air brushing faintly against your shoulder. The sensation is oddly comforting. Fabric feels alive compared to stone. It responds, it moves. It reminds you that this room contains something softer than rock and fire. The castle sounds change again. Footsteps fade entirely now. The guards have settled into their slow, repetitive watch. Somewhere above, the wind presses against a tower, but the tapestry absorbs the sound, turning it into a low hush, rather than a sharp whistle. You breathe a little deeper. Sleep edges closer, helped by the way the tapestry dampens echoes. Without it, even small noises bounce sharply off stone, startling you awake. With it, sounds blur together, easier to ignore. This matters more than you might expect. Rest depends not only on warmth, but on quiet. You shift carefully, pulling your cloak tighter, aligning yourself with the protected space you have chosen. The tapestry holds in the faint warmth radiating from your body, preventing it from bleeding directly into the wall. It is a small victory, but enough. There is no illusion of luxury here. The wool smells faintly of smoke and dust. Threads scratch your skin if you press too hard. But compared to bare stone, it feels almost generous. You think briefly of the people who wove it, months or years of labour, now serving as insulation in the dark. Researchers examining wear patterns on surviving medieval tapestries have noted heavy abrasion along the lower edges, suggesting frequent contact with furniture and bodies. This physical evidence hints at everyday use far beyond ceremonial display. You add your own weight to that history, another body leaning into fabric for warmth. The night deepens further. Cold still exists, pressing in from every direction, not protected by cloth or flame. But here, backed by wool and habit, you feel steadier. The castle no longer feels like a hollow shell. It feels layered, wrapped, temporarily domesticated. Your breathing slows again. Muscles unclench. You stop noticing the wall, entirely aware only of the space you have carved out within the cold. The tapestry does not defeat winter, but it dulls its edge, turning sharp pain into manageable discomfort. As sleep takes hold, you understand why these hangings remained essential for centuries. Not because they were beautiful, though many were, but because on nights like this they stood between people and stone. And sometimes that thin line of fabric was all that made rest possible. You wake with an ache you feel before you understand it. The cold has worked its way upward through the night, and now it rests in your bones, especially in your feet. Even wrapped in layers, even buffered by straw and cloth, the stone beneath the castle never truly lets go. Floors hold the memory of winter far better than they hold warmth. When you place your feet down, the sensation is immediate and sharp. The stone is unforgiving, smooth and damp with cold drawn up from the earth below. Many castle floors sit directly over packed ground or shallow foundations. There is little separation between you and the frozen soil. This design keeps structures stable, but it means heat drains constantly downward away from living bodies. You pull your feet back onto the bed, quickly exhaling through your nose. People learn early to avoid touching stone longer than necessary. Movement is calculated. Standing too long without protection leads to numbness, then pain, then a dull loss of feeling that lingers even after warmth returns. Castles attempt small solutions, rushes are scattered across floors, replaced periodically when they rot or flatten. These dried plants add minimal insulation but provide texture and a faint barrier against cold. You feel them crunch softly underfoot when you finally stand a reminder that someone tried at least to soften the ground. Some rooms use wooden platforms or raised sleeping areas, especially for those of higher rank. Elevation matters. Even a few inches off the stone reduces heat loss significantly. This small difference explains why status and warmth are often inseparable inside castle walls. The closer you are to the floor, the colder your nights become. A curious note appears in several estate records describing foot coverings worn exclusively indoors during winter. These are not shoes for travel, but thick, felted slippers or wrapped cloth bindings meant to protect feet from stone. They're rarely mentioned in art, which prefers more elegant imagery, but they show up repeatedly in inventories suggesting widespread use. You wrap your feet tighter in your cloak, tucking the fabric underneath to block drafts creeping along the floor. Cold air hugs low spaces, sliding quietly beneath furniture and around bed frames. Even when your upper body feels tolerable, your feet remain vulnerable. People complain of this often enough that it becomes part of the shared language of winter. There is disagreement among modern historians about how much medieval people understood heat loss through the ground. Some argue their solutions were instinctive rather than informed. Others believe long experience taught them exactly where warmth vanished fastest. Standing here, shifting weight from one foot to the other, you suspect practical knowledge mattered more than theory. The floor itself smells faintly of damp earth and old straw. Moisture seeps upward in winter, making stone slick and cold to the touch. Fires help dry the air near the hearth, but farther out the chill feels wet, penetrating fabric more efficiently. You keep your feet moving gently, encouraging blood flow without exposing them too long. Nearby someone hops lightly from bed to bench, clearly familiar with this ritual. No one lingers barefoot. No one jokes about it. The floor commands respect. You follow suit, stepping carefully, minimizing contact, choosing your path across the room like crossing ice. Over time, the ache in your feet dulls as warmth slowly returns. You sit again, pulling your legs up, cocooning yourself. The relief is immediate, though incomplete. This cycle repeats night after night. Cold from below, warmth reclaimed, then lost again. Researchers examining castle renovations have found later additions of wooden flooring layered over stone, especially in the private chambers. This suggests recognition of the problem even if solutions arrived slowly. Until then, people relied on habits, layers, and constant awareness. As you settle back down, you position yourself with care. Feet tucked, cloak folded just right. You learn to think in terms of inches and angles rather than comfort. Where you sleep, how you sit, and what touches the ground all matter. The castle quiets again. The fire glows faintly. Cold remains, especially below, but you have adjusted once more. Survival here is not about eliminating discomfort. It is about learning its patterns and responding without wasting energy. You close your eyes, feet protected for now, knowing the stone will be waiting when you rise again. Inside these walls, the floor is never neutral. It is an active force, and tonight you have negotiated with it just enough to rest. You feel the presence of others before you truly register the warmth they bring. It is subtle, almost accidental, the way shared heat accumulates when bodies settle close together. A shoulder brushes yours, a back rests nearby. No one speaks about it. No one needs to. In a medieval castle at night, closeness is not intimacy, it is strategy. As the hours stretch on, the room slowly fills with sleepers. People drift in from colder corridors and quieter corners, gravitating towards spaces where the fire once burned strongest. Beds edge closer together. Benches become makeshift sleeping spots. Blankets overlap without discussion. The boundaries you might expect simply soften and dissolve. Records from castle household repeatedly describe communal sleeping during winter, especially among servants and guards. This was not considered unusual or undignified. It was practical. Human bodies generate heat continuously, and when grouped they create a small but meaningful rise in temperature. You feel it now, a gentle buffer against the cold that no wall or tapestry can quite match. You shift slightly and notice how carefully everyone positions themselves. Not sprawled, not distant. People align side by side or back to back, maximizing shared warmth while minimizing exposed surface. You instinctively mirror this, settling into a curve that fits the space available. The rhythm of another person's breathing nearby becomes part of your own. There is an odd comfort in it. The presence of others steadies the room. Sounds soften. The castle feels less vast, less hollow. You hear small movements, fabric sliding, a quiet cough quickly stifled. These are not interruptions. They're reassurances that you are not alone in this cold. A small but revealing detail appears in some winter accounts, noting that people preferred sleeping near those they trusted. Not for safety from attack, but for warmth. Reliable sleepers stayed still. They did not kick blankets away or thrash in dreams. Over time, reputations formed. You sense that awareness here, the careful choices about who settles beside whom. There is still uncertainty among historians about how rigid social boundaries were once night fell. Some suggest rank dissolved temporarily in shared spaces. Others argue proximity did not erase hierarchy, only softened it. Lying here, you feel status blur but not disappear. The warmest spots still belong to those of higher standing. Others gather where they can. You tuck your hands between your knees, pressing them against your thighs. The heat from your own body reflects back towards you, amplified slightly by the presence nearby. It is not much, but it helps. Enough to take the edge off the cold that gnaws most sharply when you lie alone. Someone shifts closer, perhaps unconsciously drawn by warmth. You do not move away. No one comments. Privacy is a luxury for warmer seasons. In winter, the body's needs outweigh social distance. The arrangement feels temporary, understood to last only until morning light loosens the rules again. There is a faint smell of people now layered with smoke and wool. Breath fabric and old leather blend together. It is not unpleasant, just dense. The air feels lived in. You breathe slowly, letting your body settle into the shared rhythm of the room. As time passes, you notice how much quieter your own shivering becomes. Muscles relax. The small tremors that earlier ran through your legs fade. This is the reward for closeness. Not comfort exactly, but relief. Some medieval medical texts caution against sleeping alone in extreme cold, suggesting isolation weakens the body's defense. Whether this belief came from observation or theory is unclear. What matters is that people acted on it. They clustered together when temperatures dropped, trusting collective warmth more than individual endurance. The fire has long since reduced itself to embers. The hearth offers little now. Instead, the warmth you feel comes from breathing bodies and shared stillness. It is fragile, easily lost if someone rises or shifts too much, so everyone moves carefully, almost politely, even in sleep. You become aware of how your breathing syncs with the room. Inhale, exhale. Sound repeats softly across the space. It lulls you, smoothing the sharp edges of wakefulness. The cold remains, but it no longer feels aggressive. It is held at bay, if only slightly. Outside, the night deepens. Inside, the castle contracts around its people. The walls, floors, and ceilings still press in with their chill, but within that shell, small pockets of human warmth persist. You are part of one now wrapped in cloth and habit and shared endurance. As sleep returns deeper this time, you understand why solitude is rare in castle winters. Warmth multiplies when shared. Survival becomes quieter when experienced together. You let your eyes close fully, trusting the presence around you to help carry you through the remaining hours until dawn. You feel a small weight settle against your legs sometime in the night, light enough not to wake you fully, warm enough that you notice the difference almost immediately. At first, your half-asleep mind registers it as another blanket. Then you catch the faint rise and fall of breathing that is not your own. An animal has joined you. Dogs are the most common visitors. Medium-sized, thick-coated, accustomed to stone floors and long nights. They move easily through the castle after dark, slipping between sleepers without ceremony. Cats follow quieter still, curling wherever warmth gathers. In winter, no one shoos them away. Their presence is practical, not sentimental. Castle records and household rules quietly acknowledge this arrangement. Animals are allowed indoors at night during colder months, especially in shared sleeping spaces. They provide warmth, alertness, and sometimes pest control. You feel the dog's body heat through your clothing, a steady source of comfort pressed against your calves. You are just slightly careful not to disturb it. The animal responds by settling more firmly, trusting the arrangement. This trust goes both ways. Animals choose sleepers who stay still. Those who thrash or kick find themselves avoided night after night. Warmth like reputation is earned. Cats curl near chests or tuck themselves behind knees, their small bodies surprisingly effective at holding heat. You feel one near your side now, its fur soft against wool, its purr barely audible. The vibration feels like a tiny engine, constant and reassuring. In a room full of cold stone and drifting air, this quiet life feels precious. A curious note appears in several medieval household accounts describing animals listed alongside bedding in winter inventories. Blankets, straw and dogs are grouped together, suggesting they were all considered part of the same strategy. Modern readers often smile at this, but lying here you understand the logic completely. There is some uncertainty among historians about how widespread this practice was across different regions and social classes. Some sources suggest it was common everywhere, cold lingered. Others imply it was more accepted among servants and guards than among nobles. From where you lie, the distinction seems irrelevant. Warmth is warmth regardless of rank. You become aware of the animal's smell clean, in its own way earthy and familiar. It blends with straw, wool and smoke without seas standing out. The presence feels grounding, a reminder that survival here includes more than people alone. The dog shifts once stretching, then resettles with a quiet huff. Its body blocks a draft creeping along the floor, creating a small shield between you and the cold. You notice the difference immediately. Your lower legs relax, muscles unclench, the ache dulls. Cats too position themselves carefully. They seek the warmest spot and then stay there, conserving energy. In doing so, they help you do the same. Their stillness encourages yours. The room feels calmer with animals present, less restless, less hollow. Some medieval medical writers warn against animals sleeping too close, claiming their breath could cause illness. Whether this belief had any basis is unclear. What is clear is that people ignored such warnings when the temperature dropped. Practical experience often outweighed theory when nights turned bitter. You smile faintly to yourself, a small sleepy acknowledgement of how ordinary this feels. Modern ideas of hygiene and boundaries fade in conditions like these. What matters is staying warm enough to rest, rested enough to rise again. As the night continues, the animal's warmth becomes part of your own. You no longer notice where your body ends and another begins. Heat circulates, shared and steady. The cold still exists beyond this small arrangement, but it feels distant now, less personal. The castle remains dark and quiet. Fires glow weakly. Wind presses against stone. Inside, people and animals cluster together in unspoken agreement. This is not affection as you might define it. It is cooperation. Your breathing slows. The dog's breathing matches it unconsciously. The cat's purr fades into silence as it sleeps. Wrapped in fabric habit and borrowed warmth, you drift deeper into rest. Here survival is layered. Stone and fire help a little. Cloth and bodies help more. And sometimes the simplest warmth comes from another living thing choosing to lie beside you in the dark. You notice the air before you notice the light. It feels thicker near the floor, heavier, carrying the sharp bite of smoke that never fully clears. Somewhere nearby a candle has been lit, its flame small and wavering, doing more to stain the darkness than to banish it. This is how most nights are shaped now, by little points of light and the smell they leave behind. Candles are precious here. Made from tallow, or if supplies allow beeswax, they burn unevenly and drip constantly. You watch one sag along its length, a thin river of fat sliding down toward the holder. The heat it gives off is barely noticeable unless you hold your hands directly above it. Even then, it feels more symbolic than useful. Still, people keep them lit because darkness feels colder than cold itself. The smoke hangs low, curling lazily near the ceiling, then drifting back down when the air shifts. Without modern ventilation, every flame adds to the burden your lungs carry. You inhale slowly, tasting soot and grease. Your throat tightens slightly, but you do not cough. Everyone learns to breathe shallowly near fire and flame, conserving both warmth and comfort. Household records from castle life often mention the constant expense of candles, especially in winter when nights stretch long. Light is rationed carefully. Some chambers go dark early, relying on moonlight or memory to navigate familiar spaces. Others keep one flame burning through the night, not for warmth, but for reassurance. You understand that instincts now. A flicker in the dark makes the castle feel occupied rather than abandoned. You sit near the wall, watching shadows crawl as the candle shifts. Tapestries absorb some of the smoke, their fibres darkened by years of exposure. Over time they take on the scent of fire permanently. Even clean fabric smells faintly burned here. It is a smell you associate with safety and discomfort in equal measure. There is an odd comfort in the rhythm of dripping tallow. Drop, pause, drop. The sound is soft but persistent. It marks time when clocks are absent and sleep refuses to deepen. You listen to it, letting the repetition steady your thoughts. Some medieval observers believed that smoke carried protective qualities, driving away illness and pests. Others worried it weakened the body over time. The surviving evidence does not point cleanly in either direction. What is clear is that people tolerated smoke because the alternatives were worse. Darkness invited accidents. Darkness invited fear. You rub your eyes gently and feel grit beneath your fingers. Soot settles everywhere. It coats surfaces skin fabric. People wipe it away constantly, though it never truly leaves. Over time, eyes adjust. Lungs adapt as much as they can. Complaints fade into habit. Nearby, someone shields a candle with their hand, coaxing the flame higher to light a corner of the room. The warmth from that small fire touches your face briefly, then disappears as the hand moves away. It is not enough to change the temperature, but it reminds you what warmth feels like. A detail that surfaces in some winter letters mentions people deliberately clustering candles together for short periods, creating a pocket of heat and light for shared tasks. The effect is brief and limited, but meaningful. You imagine hands gathered, breath-visible faces briefly illuminated before the flames are separated again to conserve fuel. As the night progresses, candles are snuffed one by one. Smoke thickens momentarily with each extinguished flame, then settles. The room darkens gradually rather than all at once. This slow descent into shadow makes the transition easier. Your eyes adjust. Your body prepares to rest again. You shift your position, careful not to disturb the small arrangement of warmth you have built. The animal beside you stirs but does not leave. The people nearby remain still. Everyone seems to understand that movement wastes energy. Stillness preserves it. The candle nearest you flickers then steadies. Its flame casts a faint glow on the stone floor, revealing uneven patches where moisture has gathered. You can almost see the cold clinging there waiting. The light feels fragile against it, a thin line of resistance. Some thinkers of the time linked fire and light to moral order, believing darkness invited chaos. Whether or not people truly believed this in practice is hard to say. What matters is that light mattered. Even a single flame changed how a room felt, how people behaved within it. You lean back, letting your eyes half close, watching the flame through heavy lids. The heat brushes your face, intermittently synchronized with the candle's movement. It becomes hypnotic. Breath in, breath out, flicker, pause. Eventually someone moves quietly and pinches the wick. Darkness folds inward, complete but not shocking. The room exhales. Without the flame, the cold feels closer but also quieter. The air settles. You adjust your cloak one last time and tuck your hands close. The smell of smoke lingers, comforting, now familiar. In the absence of light, other senses sharpen. You hear breathing. You feel shared warmth. You sense the castle holding still around you. Candles and smoke never truly warmed these nights. They offered something else instead, a sense of presence, a fragile claim against the dark. With that memory lingering, you let your awareness fade, sinking back into shallow sleep as the castle waits for morning. You wake with the taste of yesterday still lingering in your mouth. Heavy, salty, faintly sweet in places. Food stays with you longer in winter, not just in memory, but in your body. Inside a castle, what you eat before sleep is part of how you survive the cold, as important as fire or cloth. Your stomach feels full in a way that is both comforting and deliberate. Evening meals here are not light. Thick stews, dense bread, salted meat when it can be spared. Fat is prized above almost everything else. It burns slowly, releasing warmth over hours rather than minutes. You feel that steady heat now deep inside, supporting you from within as the night presses in. Castle kitchens plan winter meals carefully. Fresh produce is rare. What remains comes from stores laid down months earlier. Grain dried and ground. Meat preserved with salt or smoke. Cheese aged until sharp. These foods are not exciting, but they are reliable. They give the body something to work with when the air grows unforgiving. You remember the stew from earlier, rich with barley and root vegetables, thick enough that the spoon stood upright for a moment before tipping. That density matters. Thin broth would vanish too quickly, leaving you hollow and cold by midnight. This meal stays with you slow and stubborn, like the stone walls themselves. Some winter menus include a surprising addition. Spices used sparingly, not just for flavour, but for perceived warmth. Pepper, ginger, even a touch of cinnamon if trade routes allow. These ingredients are expensive, so their presence signals importance, but they also carry a reputation for stirring the blood. Whether they truly warmed the body or simply made people feel warmer is difficult to untangle. What matters is that people believed in the effect. You shift lightly and feel how your body responds. Muscles feel less tense. Fingers are not quite as stiff as before. Heat from digestion spreads outwards, slowly dulling the edge of the cold. This is one of the few forms of warmth that cannot be stolen by drafts or stone. A detail tucked into castle provisioning records notes increased rations during winter nights for guards and workers on watch. Extra bread, a second serving of stew, Sometimes a bit of rendered fat stirred in at the last moment. This was not generosity, it was necessity. Hungry bodies lose heat faster. Everyone understood that even if they did not explain it in modern terms. You hear a stomach growl somewhere nearby, then a quiet laugh quickly smothered. Food is always on people's minds this time of year. Not abundance, but sufficiency. Enough to last the night. Enough to wake up. There is some uncertainty among modern scholars about how evenly food was distributed inside castles during winter. Some sources suggest rigid hierarchy remained. Others hint at flexibility when survival was at stake. Lying here, you suspect the truth shifted with circumstances. Cold makes strict rules harder to enforce. You lick your lips unconsciously tasting salt. Salt preserves food, but it also encourages thirst. Water is cold and unpleasant to drink at night. People balance intake carefully, knowing that getting up to relieve oneself means facing the floor again. Everything is connected. Every decision carries weight. As the night deepens, digestion slows, but it does not stop. Your body continues its quiet work, converting stored calories into heat. You feel drowsier, heavier, grounded. This warmth feels different from fire. It is steady internal, harder to lose. Medical thinking of the time links strong digestion with resilience. A well-fed body is believed to resist illness better. Whether this belief arose from observation or theory hardly matters. The practice remains. Eat well before sleep, especially in winter. You adjust your position, curling slightly, protecting your core. The animal beside you stirs, then settles again. Shared warmth layers with internal heat, creating a fragile comfort that feels earned rather than given. Outside, the cold continues its work. Inside, your body answers in its own way, fueled by grain fat and habit. The meal you ate hours ago is still helping you now, still holding the night at bay. You let that thought fade as sleep deepens once more. Tomorrow food will matter again, but for now it has done its job. It has carried you this far into the night, and with it you drift onward, warm enough to rest, waiting quietly for the slow return of morning. You feel warmth in your hands before you taste it. A wooden cup rests between your palms, rough and familiar, its surface nicked by years of use. The liquid inside steams, faintly releasing a smell that is both comforting and sharp. This is one of the small defences against winter that people rely on without ceremony. The drink is not tea, not as you know it. More often it is ale, warmed gently over embers, sometimes thinned with water, sometimes thickened with herbs or honey if supplies allow. On other nights it might be broth rich with fat and salt meant to fortify rather than refresh. Hot drinks are not a luxury here. They are part of the night's rhythm. You bring the cup closer and inhale. Steam warms your face, loosening skin tightened by cold. The first sip spreads heat through your mouth and throat, immediate and reassuring. It does not last long, but it arrives quickly, which matters when the cold feels relentless. Castle routines often include a final warm drink before settling for the night. This practice appears again and again in household instructions and steward notes. Fires are still burning at this hour, making it the last chance to heat liquid easily. Once embers fade, the effort becomes impractical. People plan accordingly. You swallow slowly, savouring the sensation. The warmth moves downward, pooling briefly in your chest before dispersing. It feels like a small fire lit inside you, short-lived but welcome. Combined with the heavy meal from earlier, it creates a moment of balance. Some drinks carry herbs believed to support sleep or warmth. Fennel, anise, mint. The effects vary and belief often matters as much as chemistry. Still, the habit persists. You notice how your muscles loosen slightly after a few sips, how your shoulders drop without conscious effort. A curious mention in several monastic accounts describes hot spiced wine, reserved specifically for the coldest nights, rationed carefully and shared among those on watch. Whether this was common outside religious settings remains unclear, but the idea lingers. Warm liquid feels almost medicinal in conditions like these. You pass the cup back when you are finished, careful not to spill. Every drop matters. Liquid that hits the floor chills quickly, turning into waste. Someone else will take a turn, hands cupped eagerly repeating the ritual. There is no expectation that this warmth will last. It is understood as temporary relief, a pause rather than a solution. Still, it changes how you settle afterward. Fingers feel more flexible, breathing deepens. The cold seems less sharp for a time. You wipe your mouth on your sleeve, tasting herbs and faint bitterness. The smell lingers, mixing with smoke and wool. It becomes part of the night's atmosphere, another layer added to the castle's scent. Medical thinking of the era often links warm drinks with balance inside the body. Cold is believed to disturb internal harmony. Heat restores it. While explanations vary, the practice remains steady. People drink something warm before sleep because it feels right, because experience has taught them it helps. You set the cup aside and pull your cloak tighter. The warmth fades gradually, not abruptly. It gives you time to settle back into stillness before the cold reasserts itself fully. This delay matters more than you might expect. It makes falling asleep easier. The animal beside you shifts, perhaps reacting to the change in temperature, then settles again. The room grows quieter as conversation fades entirely. Only breathing and the faint crackle of embers remain. You lie back, hands tucked beneath fabric, recalling the sensation of steam on your face. Even as the cold returns, that memory lingers, softening its edge. These small comforts stack quietly one on top of another until they make rest possible. Outside, winter holds firm. Inside, you have done what you can. A warm meal, a hot drink, shared heat, layers of cloth. None of it is enough alone. Together they carry you through the night. Your eyes close again. The cup is empty now, but its warmth has already done its work. You drift, breathing slowly, letting sleep take you deeper as the castle waits in silence. You notice the chimney only when it disappoints you. From a distance, it promises something better than the open hearths you have already learned to distrust. A narrow throat rising upward, meant to carry smoke away and pull warmth inward. In daylight, it looks clever. At night, when the cold settles in fully, its limits become obvious. You sit near the hearth beneath it and feel the familiar pattern repeat. Heat gathers briefly around your face and hands, then vanishes upward, drawn by the same force meant to clear the air. The chimney does its job too well. Smoke thins, warmth follows it out. What remains is a gentle draft that pulls against your skin like a reminder not to expect too much. Chimneys are still something of a novelty in many castles during the later medieval period. Some older halls rely on central fires with smoke escaping through roof openings. Others have added chimneys room by room over time. This uneven adoption explains why comfort varies so widely from chamber to chamber. You sense it immediately. One space feels barely tolerable. Another feels no better than standing outside. You lean closer and watch the fire respond. Flames stretch upward, eagerly feeding the drawer. Embers glow red, then dim. The fire seems restless, always in motion, never allowed to settle and radiate evenly. You understand now why people crowd the hearth so tightly. Distance matters. A single step backward changes everything. There is an old belief, mentioned occasionally in winter sermons and household advice, that chimneys tame fire, making it safer but weaker. Fire contained behaves differently. It warms less broadly. It demands attention. Whether this belief shaped design or merely explained experience is unclear, but the feeling persists. Chimneys protect, but they do not comfort. You shift position again, careful to guard your back from the draft slipping downward from the flue. Cold air follows the same path smoke once took, reversing direction when the fire weakens. You pull your cloak tighter, muttering softly under your breath. Others nearby do the same, instinctively adjusting as the balance changes. Some castle residents try to improve matters with simple additions. Wooden hoods above hearths, stone lips extended outward. These attempts appear in building records as small modifications rather than major renovations. The results vary. Sometimes the room feels slightly warmer. Sometimes nothing changes at all. Trial and error leaves uneven traces in stone and mortar. You notice soot darkening the area around the chimney mouth, layered thick from years of use. Fingers brushing against the come-away blackened. This mark tells a quiet story. Fire has lived here a long time, but it has never stayed long enough to dominate the room. As the night deepens, the hearth becomes more symbolic than practical. It gives light. It offers something to gather around. But its warmth feels fragile, easily disrupted by a gust of air or a shift in fuel. You stop relying on it and focus instead on what you can control. Your layers, your posture, the presence nearby. There are accounts from later centuries praising improved chimney designs, claiming they transform domestic life. Looking at this one, you suspect progress came slowly and unevenly. For now, chimneys help with breathing more than they help with warmth. Lungs matter too, of course, but tonight you feel the trade clearly. You retreat slightly, choosing a spot where the draft weakens and the glow still reaches. The fire flickers behind you now, no longer the centre of your attention. You let others take the closest positions, knowing the benefit is brief anyway. Your body settles again, adjusting to this version of the room. The cold remains steady and patient. The chimney continues its quiet work, pulling away what little heat fire produces. You accept it as part of the architecture, another compromise layered into castle life. As you close your eyes, the hearth crackles softly, then quiets. Smoke thins, air shifts. The chimney stands above it all, doing exactly what it was built to do, even if that means leaving you colder than you hoped. You breathe slowly, letting expectations fade. In this place, warmth is never promised by design alone. It is gathered, shared, and guarded through the night. The chimney taught you that lesson simply by failing to do more. You feel the enclosure before you fully see it. Fabric rises around you like a soft wall close enough to brush your shoulders when you shift. This is the curtained bed, one of the most effective quiet defences against the cold inside a castle, even though at first glance it looks more decorative than practical. You draw the curtain closed with a careful tug. The change is immediate. Not warm exactly, but contained. The air inside feels still, no longer sliding endlessly across your skin. Your breath lingers here, pooling gently, building a thin layer of warmth that would never survive in the open room beyond. You exhale slowly, testing it, and feel the difference settle in. These beds are not common everywhere. They appear more often in private chambers and in households with the means to invest in extra fabric and wood. Frames support heavy cloth on all sides, sometimes even overhead. Linen for summer, wool for winter. The materials change with the season, but the purpose remains the same: to trap heat where the body needs it most. You sit back against the mattress and notice how sound changes. The castle does not echo as sharply here. Footsteps become dull thumps rather than ringing knocks. The distant wind softens into a low murmur. This quiet matters. Rest comes easier when the world feels smaller. You tuck the curtain more securely around your feet, sealing off a gap where cold air might slip in. People learn quickly that even a hand's width left open can drain warmth faster than you expect. The bed becomes a room within a room, fragile but effective. A note buried in several household accounts mentions curtained beds being reserved for winter use, stored or left open during warmer months. This suggests they were not simply symbols of wealth, but tools deployed when conditions demanded them. You feel that practicality now. The difference between sleeping enclosed and exposed is the difference between shivering and resting. There is some disagreement among scholars about how common these beds truly were outside noble households. Art and literature tend to exaggerate their presence, focusing on the elite. Physical evidence paints a patchier picture. Still, enough survived to suggest the idea spread wherever people could afford it. Comfort, once discovered, tends to travel. Inside the enclosure, the smells are stronger. Wool, old wood, the faint trace of bodies that have slept here before. It is not unpleasant, just close. You breathe slowly, adjusting. The fabric absorbs some of the smoke drifting through the room, filtering it slightly before it reaches you. You lie back and pull your cloak tighter, creating layers within layers. Heat gathers gradually, almost imperceptibly. The cold outside the curtain still exists, pressing against the fabric, but it feels distant now, like weather beyond a wall. A small detail you notice is how people arrange their beds facing away from doors and drafts whenever possible. Curtains help, but placement still matters. Experience teaches these choices. You sense the accumulated knowledge in how everything is positioned just so. As time passes, the space grows warmer than you expect. Not enough to remove layers, but enough that your muscles relax fully for the first time tonight. You stop bracing. Your jaw unclenches. This is as close to comfort as a medieval castle allows in winter. Some contemporary observers worried that sleeping in clothes like this encouraged stale air and illness. Others praised the warmth and stillness. The truth likely depended on the night, the fabric, the people inside. For now, the balance feels right. You shift once more, careful not to disturb the seal you have made. The curtain brushes your cheek softly. It feels almost hygiene, almost gentle, in a place defined by shame and defence. Outside your small enclosure, the castle continues its long night. Fires fade, wind moves. Guards walk their slow routes. Inside you have carved out a pocket of human scale, a place where breath stays close and cold waits politely at the edge. Your breathing slows, deepens. The fabric holds steady. Sleep arrives more confidently now, no longer chased away by constant drafts. The curtained bed does not defeat winter, but it gives you something precious. Control. You let your eyes close, fully cocooned in cloth and habit, knowing that for the next few hours at least, the night will have to work harder to reach you. You notice the difference in warmth long before anyone points it out. It shows itself in small things, thicker curtains, a better placed bed, an extra layer of cloth between body and stone. Inside a castle, comfort is never evenly distributed, and winter makes those differences impossible to ignore. You lie where you have been directed, aware that this spot was chosen for you rather than by you. It is not the coldest place, but it is not the warmest either. That honour belongs to rooms closer to the centre of the structure, farther from outer walls, higher above the ground, and nearer to reliable hearths. These spaces belong to those of higher standing. No one argues about this arrangement, it is simply understood. As the night deepens, you feel how subtle advantages accumulate. Someone of rank sleeps behind thicker tapestries inside a curtained bed warmed by a hearth that is fed longer into the night. Their mattress is fuller, their blankets heavier. Even the floor beneath them may be layered with wood rather than bare stone. None of these things alone would transform the night, but together they change how the cold is experienced. Lower down the social ladder, warmth becomes something you earn through endurance rather than entitlement. Servants and guards rely more heavily on shared spaces, body heat and routine. Their beds sit closer to drafts, their fires die sooner. They learn to sleep lighter, waking often to adjust layers or reposition themselves. You sense this hierarchy without seeing it. It lives in the quiet efficiency of how people move, who adjusts a fire and who waits, who draws a curtain and who sleeps exposed. The castle speaks this language fluently, and winter makes it louder. There is an old saying recorded in several medieval texts suggesting that cold teaches obedience. Whether meant literally or metaphorically, the idea lingers. Those with power insulate themselves not just with stone and cloth, but with control over resources. Those without adapt their bodies instead. Still, winter sometimes softens boundaries. When temperatures plunge far enough, even rank bends slightly. Extra blankets appear in common rooms, fires burn longer than planned. Food portions increase quietly. Survival has a way of levelling rules when it becomes uncertain. You remember earlier how people clustered together, how warmth multiplied when shared. That instinct does not disappear just because status exists. Even nobles rely on servants to tend fires and prepare beds. Even the highest rooms cool eventually. Cold reaches everyone, though it does not treat everyone equally. Some historical accounts hint at resentment simmering during harsh winters fueled in part by unequal comfort. Others suggest winter-reinforced dependence binding households together through shared hardship. The truth likely shifts from castle to castle, night to night. You shift slightly, feeling the edge of your mattress dip where straw has thinned. Somewhere above you, someone sleeps more comfortably. Somewhere below, someone sleeps worse. This awareness does not disturb you as much as you expect. It feels normal here. Another feature of the structure, like walls or stairs. As your body settles again, you focus on what you do have. Layers, shared warmth nearby, a place to lie that lifts you from the floor. In a medieval castle, these things matter more than fairness. The fire crackles faintly in a distant room, its warmth never meant to reach you. You accept that without bitterness. Endurance is its own kind of status here, earned quietly and carried inward. Your breathing slows, muscles relax. The night presses on indifferent to hierarchy, patient and thorough. Inside it you find your place, not the warmest, not the coldest, but survivable. And that in this world is enough to let sleep return once more. You notice movement in the castle long after most bodies have settled into stillness. Soft footsteps pass through corridors. A door opens, then closes again carefully. The night is not as quiet as it pretends to be. While many sleep, others remain awake, working quietly to keep the castle breathing through the cold. Servants tend fires even when the rest of the household rests. Not constantly, not generously, but enough to prevent hearths from going completely dark. You sense these small interventions rather than see them. A brief flare of light beneath the door, the faint scrape of iron tools against stone, the smell of fresh smoke drifting briefly before thinning again. Guards patrol slowly, their routes shortened in winter to conserve strength. Boots echo softly on stone, then fade. They pause often, shifting weight, stamping feet lightly to keep blood moving. Night watch is harder in the cold. Alertness slips more easily when the body strains simply to stay warm. You lie still listening, comforted by the knowledge that someone is awake. Fires do not tend themselves. Doors do not stay shut on their own. Cold creeps in whenever attention lapses. The castle relies on this quiet labour as much as it relies on walls. There are references in castle accounts to rotating night duties during winter, spreading the burden so no one freezes for too long. Whether this system was humane or merely practical is hard to say. What is clear is that endurance had limits. Even the hardiest bodies needed relief. You hear a cough from somewhere nearby, quickly muffled. Smoke and cold both irritate lungs, especially during long nights of watch. People learn to cough quietly, preserving silence and warmth at once. A small, easily missed detail in some steward records notes extra allowances of food or drink for those on night duty. A ladle of stew saved. A cup of warm ale passed quietly. These gestures are not announced. They are expected. The work demands it. As hours pass, you sense the rhythm of these movements. Fire tended, corridor checked, door secured, then stillness again. The pattern repeats steady and subdued. It blends into the background of the night as essential as breathing. You shift slightly beneath your coverings, careful not to undo the warmth you have gathered. Others nearby remain motionless, trusting the system to hold. This trust is not sentimental. It is earned night after night through routine. There is some disagreement in modern interpretations about how well-staffed castles truly were at night, especially in winter. Numbers vary wildly depending on region and period. Listening now, you imagine fewer people than ideal, each carrying more responsibility than they would prefer. The fire nearest you glows faintly, then brightens for a moment as someone feeds it. The warmth reaches your face briefly, then recedes. It is enough to remind you that effort is ongoing, even if the result feels modest. As the castle settles again, the sounds grow farther apart. Footsteps become rarer. Doors remain closed longer. The workers have found a balance between vigilance and rest, conserving their own strength as carefully as they conserve fuel. You think briefly about how different your night would feel without this quiet labour. Cold would sharpen, darkness would deepen. The castle would feel abandoned rather than inhabited. That thought passes, replaced by a sense of reassurance. Your breathing slows again, the night work continues without your involvement. You're allowed this rest because others remain alert. The exchange feels fair even if it is never spoken aloud. The cold remains patient and persistent, but it is held in check by hands you do not see and routines you barely notice. Wrapped in cloth and shared warmth, you drift deeper into sleep, knowing the castle is not entirely asleep around you, and that makes all the difference. You wake to a silence that feels heavier than before. Snow has that effect. It presses down on sound, softening the world until even the castle seems to hold its breath. Somewhere beyond the walls, winter has deepened its grip, and inside you feel the change immediately. The air feels denser, colder, as if the night itself has thickened. Snow piles against outer walls, sealing gaps in some places while forcing cold deeper in others. The castle becomes more isolated now. Courtyards disappear beneath white. Paths vanish. What remains is stone cold and time stretching long until morning. When snow falls heavily, movement slows everywhere. Doors open less often. Fires are fed more cautiously because fuel must last. You sense this restraint in the room. The warmth you felt earlier is fainter now, guarded carefully rather than shared freely. Castles are built to withstand attack, not weather, and deep winter exposes that truth. Towers catch wind, roofs groan under weight, meltwater seeps into cracks during the day, then freezes again at night, tightening stone like a clenched fist. You feel the result as a sharper chill radiating inward. People speak less on nights like this. Words waste breath and breath carries heat. Conversations shorten, movements become deliberate. You hear someone cross the room, carefully avoiding sudden steps that might slip on damp stone. A note buried in several winter chronicles mentions how snowfall changed the rhythm of castle life, compressing it inward. Work paused, travel stopped, even conflict waited. Snow enforced a kind of temporary truce between people and the world beyond the walls. You adjust your coverings again, responding to the shift. What worked earlier now feels barely sufficient. You tuck fabric more tightly around your shoulders and curl your knees closer to your chest. Your body remembers these movements, repeating them without instruction. The fire struggles tonight. Snow dampens wood stored too close to outer walls, making it harder to keep flames alive. Smoke thickens briefly as someone tries to coax heat from stubborn fuel. The warmth that reaches you is weaker, fleeting. There is uncertainty in the records about how often castles became fully cut off during severe winters. Some accounts describe weeks of isolation. Others suggest constant, if difficult, contact with surrounding lands. Lying here, you imagine the outside world erased, reduced to cold and silence. You hear the wind push against a tower muffled by snow. The sound is dull, almost distant, as if heard through cloth. This is winter at its most complete, wrapping the castle in layers just as you are wrapped now. Your thoughts slow. Cold has a way of narrowing focus. You think less about tomorrow and more about the present moment. Breath, warmth, stillness. The future can wait until daylight proves it exists. Somewhere nearby, someone whispers a short prayer, not loudly enough to intrude. Faith often grows louder when the cold deepens, when control feels limited. You do not analyze it. You simply let the sound pass through you, another layer added to the night. Sleep comes and goes in short waves. You drift, wake, adjust, drift again. The snow continues its quiet work outside, insulating and isolating at once. Inside the castle feels like an island floating in white. By the time your eyes close again, you have accepted the deeper cold as part of the night's character. This is winter, its most honest, slow, heavy, unyielding. You breathe steadily, conserving warmth and energy. Morning will come when it comes. Until then, the castle holds you, and you hold what warmth you can suspended in the stillness of a snowbound night. You wake needing water and immediately wish you did not. Thirst creeps up quietly in winter, encouraged by salt smoke and the dry pull of cold air. But the thought of leaving your place, of exposing yourself to stone and shadow, makes you hesitate. Everything about getting water at night feels like a negotiation with discomfort. When you finally sit up, the cold rushes back in sharp and unforgiving. The warmth you built collapses almost instantly. You pull your cloak tight and move carefully, placing your feet where you know the floor is least cruel. Each step sends a jolt upward through your legs. Stone does not forgive bare skin, not even for a moment. Water inside a castle is rarely warm in winter. Buckets sit near walls, their surfaces rimmed with frost. Even indoors, water grows painfully cold sometimes, forming thin sheets of ice overnight. You break it gently with your fingers, wincing at the shock. The sound is small but loud in the quiet room. Washing is brief, functional, and often postponed altogether during the coldest stretches. People wipe faces and hands rather than immersing them. Full bathing becomes rare, save for moments when the weather eases or illness demands it. You splash a little water on your hands and immediately regret it, drying them hastily on your clothing before the cold can settle in. The smell of unwashed bodies mixes with smoke and wool. It's not pleasant, but it is accepted. Cleanliness yields to survival. People choose warmth over comfort again and again without apology. Winter reshapes priorities until they become unrecognizable to anyone outside it. There are scattered references to heated water being used for washing in some castles, but these moments appear exceptional rather than routine. Fuel is too precious to waste on comfort alone. Most nights, cold water is the only option, and even that is used sparingly. You return to your place as quickly as you can, heart beating a little faster, breath visible for a moment before you tuck your face back into fabric. The relief is immediate but incomplete. Fingers ache as feeling returns a dull throb that lingers longer than you would like. You flex them slowly, pressing hands together, borrowing warmth from yourself. Nearby, someone chuckles quietly, having made the same mistake earlier. The shared understanding passes without words. Everyone learns the limits of necessity here. Medical thinking of the time often links cold water with imbalance and illness, especially when used excessively. Whether these beliefs came from observational caution hardly matters. The result is the same. People avoid water when they can, especially at night. You settle again, taking care to rebuild what warmth you lost. Cloak tucked, feet drawn close. Breathing slowed deliberately. It takes longer this time, cold punishes interruption. The castle returns to stillness around you. Buckets sit untouched. Water waits cold and patient. You close your eyes, promising yourself not to rise again unless you must. Sleep finds you slowly layered with the memory of cold water and the relief of returning warmth. In winter, even the simplest acts carry weight. Tonight you have paid it and learned again why stillness matters. You wake with a heaviness in your chest that has nothing to do with sleep. Breathing feels thicker now, as if the air itself has weight. Cold settles differently when it lingers long enough. It does not always announce itself with pain. Sometimes it arrives quietly, dulling the body from the inside out. Your throat feels dry and slightly sore. Smoke from the hearth has worked its way deep into the room overnight, and the cold has kept it there. You clear your throat softly, careful not to wake anyone. Coughing wastes heat and draws attention. People learn to suppress it unless absolutely necessary. Illness moves more easily in winter. You sense that without needing to be told. Bodies are tired, defences are stretched thin. Small discomforts linger instead of passing quickly. A chill caught one night can follow someone for weeks, turning into weakness that never quite leaves. You think of how often people here complain of aching joints, stiff fingers, lungs that never feel fully clear until spring. These complaints appear again and again in letters and household notes, treated as part of the season rather than conditions needing explanation. Cold does not cause illness on its own, but it opens doors the body struggles to keep shut. You shift carefully, listening to the room. Someone nearby breathes unevenly, each inhale shallow, each exhale slow. Another person snores softly, the sound thick and congested. No one comments. This is familiar. Winter voices sound different, rougher, slower. There is a belief that circulates quietly through the castle, shared more through habit than words. Stay warm and you stay well. Let the cold reach your core and something inside may never quite recover. Whether this belief came from observation or instinct hardly matters. People act on it all the same. You pull your cloak higher, covering your mouth and nose, warming the air before it reaches your lungs. The fabric smells of smoke and old wool. It is not pleasant, but it feels protective. Each breath becomes a small act of caution. Some nights someone does not wake at all. The reason is not always clear. Records rarely explain beyond vague phrases. Weakness, fever, a long decline. Cold blurs the edges of cause and effect. What is clear is that winter takes more than it gives. You do not dwell on this thought for long. Thinking too hard about vulnerability does not help you sleep. Instead, you focus on what you can feel. The steady warmth near your chest. The slow return of comfort as your breathing evens out again. The animal beside you shifts and presses closer, its body radiating quiet heat. You welcome it without moving. Shared warmth is not just physical, it steadies the mind, reminding you that life persists even in harsh conditions. You notice how the room smells heavier now. Damp wool, old straw, human presence layered thickly. This air would feel stifling in summer. Tonight it feels necessary. You breathe it in carefully, accepting it as part of staying alive. Cold teaches patience. Illness teaches caution. Together they shape how people move, speak and rest. You feel that shaping happening even now, guiding you towards stillness, encouraging you to conserve strength. Sleep returns slowly but deeper than before. Your body seems to understand that rest is not optional tonight. It is a form of defense. Muscles loosen, breathing steadies. The ache in your chest fades to a background sensation rather than a warning. Outside winter holds its ground, inside you hold yours. Wrapped in cloth and habit, you drift back into sleep, trusting warmth, time and an endurance to carry you through until morning comes again. You wake to the feeling of air touching your face in a way that feels wrong. Not colder exactly, but sharper, as if it carries intent. It slips in through your breath, settles briefly in your chest, and leaves behind a faint unease. People here talk about cold air as if it has character, and lying awake now you understand why. The belief is old and deeply rooted. Cold air is thought to be dangerous when it moves too freely, especially at night. It creeps into the body through the mouth, the nose, the ears. It upsets balance. It invites weakness. You do not question this belief as you pull your cloak higher, shielding your face so each breath warms before it reaches you. Rooms are arranged with this fear in mind. Beds are turned away from windows and doors. Curtains are drawn tight. Even when warmth is scarce, stillness is valued. Moving air feels worse than cold air that stays put. You sense this preference everywhere in how people cluster and how they avoid open spaces once night settles. You remember hearing someone earlier mutter about bad air, blaming it for aches that never seem to leave. Whether this comes from observation or tradition is difficult to separate. What matters is that people behave as if it is true. They block drafts. They cover their heads. They sleep with mouths tucked into fabric. Medical thinking of the time ties health closely to balance. Hot and cold, wet and dry, too much of any one thing invites trouble. Cold nights threaten that balance, especially when air moves unchecked. You respond instinctively now, curling inward, protecting your core. Someone nearby adjusts a hanging cloth over a doorway, muttering softly as it catches. The difference is immediate. The air stills. The room feels calmer. You relax without realizing you are tense. There are moments when belief and practicality align so closely they become inseparable. Drafts make people miserable. Still air feels safer. Whether the danger is real or imagined hardly matters when behavior produces comfort. You press your face into your sleeve, breathing slowly. The air warms with each cycle. This small habit repeats across the room, dozens of people doing the same thing without coordination. Experience has taught them what theory never needed to explain. Outside, the wind continues unseen and unheard through thick walls. Inside, the castle becomes a place of held breath and careful silence. Cold remains, but it no longer moves as freely. That alone feels like a victory. Sleep returns again, guided by quiet and containment. You let the idea of dangerous air fade into the background, replaced by the steady reassurance of warmth held close. The night continues and you continue with it one breath at a time. You notice the quiet words before you notice the feeling they bring. A whisper travels through the room, barely louder than breath, then fades again. Someone is praying. Not loudly, not formally, just enough to be heard by whoever might be listening in the dark. Night prayers are different from daytime ones. They are shorter, less structured, shaped by cold fingers and tired lungs. You do not hear sermons or full recitations, you hear fragments, a name, a request, a pause. The words feel less like speech and more like habit, something done because it has always been done when the night grows long. You lie still and listen. The sound does not disturb you, it settles you. Even if you do not share the belief behind the words, you recognize their purpose. In a place where warmth is uncertain and control limited, ritual offers a different kind of shelter. People pray before sleep for the many reasons: safety, health, dawn. Some ask simply to wake up, others ask for the cold to ease or for fires to last. The requests are practical rather than lofty. Winter paras faith down to essentials. You remember seeing candles earlier, placed near small wooden crosses, or worn objects kept close to the bed. These are not decorations, they are anchors, things that stay familiar when everything else feels hostile. Hands reach for them instinctively, before sleep, fingers brushing wood or metal briefly, then retreating back into cloth. The timing of these rituals matters. They happen after the fire has settled, after movement slows, when the night feels most complete. People wait for that moment when resistance gives way to acceptance. Prayer fits naturally there, not as an interruption, but as a closing gesture. You notice how voices lower when these words are spoken. No one wants to wake others. No one wants to waste breath. Prayers are shaped by cold as much as by belief. Short sentences, long pauses, silence doing most of the work. There are no bells at this hour, no signals. Everyone knows when it is time. The body recognizes it. Muscles grow heavy. Thoughts turn inward. The night presses close enough that people respond in the ways they know. Some nights the prayers include thanks, gratitude for shelter, for food, for shared warmth. This surprises you a little. Gratitude feels out of place in discomfort, but perhaps that is why it appears. It shifts attention away from what hurts and toward what holds. You feel your own breathing slow as the whispers fade. The room seems calmer afterward, as if the act itself has smoothed something rough. Even those who did not speak seem to settle more deeply. There are no answers expected, no signs awaited. The ritual ends quietly without conclusion. People simply turn inward again, satisfied that they have marked the night properly. You adjust your cloak and tuck your hands closer to your chest. The animal beside you remains still, warmth steady and reassuring. The fire does not flare, the wind does not stop, nothing outward changes, and yet the room feels slightly more contained. Sleep follows more easily now, not immediately but gently, like a door eased shut rather than slammed. Your thoughts wander less. The cold remains present, but it no longer feels confrontational. It feels like a condition to endure rather than a threat to fight. You drift in and out, aware of time passing only by the shift of weight and breath around you. The prayers do not repeat. One round is enough. Repetition would waste energy. Faith, like warmth, is rationed carefully through the night. Eventually, even awareness fades. The castle holds steady. The night deepens. Whatever comfort prayer provides has already been taken in, folded quietly into the layers that carry you toward rest. You notice the warmth before you see where it comes from. It is faint, almost imagined, but it stands out because it is different. Not the shared heat of bodies or the lingering breath trapped in fabric. This warmth feels deliberate, planned, the result of small choices made earlier in the day. Someone important sleeps nearby, you can tell by the signs. Thicker curtains drawn tight. A bed set farther from outer walls. The faint scent of herbs tucked into linen sharper and cleaner than the rest of the room. These details do not announce themselves. They simply exist quietly, shaping the night. You glimpse it when you shift just enough to catch a corner of the arrangement. A copper pan tucked near embers earlier, now removed. Stones warmed by the hearth and wrapped in cloth placed carefully at the foot of a bed. They would have given off heat for hours before cooling a slow gif meant for someone whose comfort mattered. Such touches are not common, but they are not rare either. They belong to a world where resources are uneven and cleverness fills the gaps. Warmed stones, heated bricks, even small metal objects passed briefly through flame, then hidden away beneath blankets. None of this feels extravagant. It feels cautious, controlled. You sense how quietly these preparations are made. No one speaks of them openly. Luxury here is not about display, especially in winter. It is about reducing risk. A warmer sleeper is less likely to fall ill. A well-rested lord governs better than a shivering one. Nearby you hear the faint clink of the metal as someone adjusts an object beneath their bedding. The sound is subtle but telling. You smile faintly, not out of envy but recognition. Warmth is always the goal. Everyone pursues it in the ways available to them. The rest of the room does not resent this. It simply adapts. Those without such aids cluster closer together. They borrow heat from bodies instead of stone. Different tools, same purpose. You settle again, adjusting your cloak to trap what warmth you can. The presence of these small comforts nearby makes the cold feel less personal. It reminds you that people have always tried to soften harsh conditions even when they could not change them. Somewhere fabric shifts as someone turns, carefully protecting whatever heat source they have tucked away. The movement is slow practiced. Even luxury must be handled gently here. A single careless motion could waste hours of stored warmth. You breathe slowly, letting the knowledge fade. Comparison does not help you sleep. Awareness does. Understanding how the night works, how people work within it, brings a strange calm. The castle remains wrapped in cold stone and winter air. Within it, small islands of comfort exist, scattered, unevenly sustained by preparation and habit. You occupy your own island and are modest but sufficient. As sleep deepens again, the faint warmth nearby becomes just another part of the background, like the smell of smoke or the sound of breathing. It does not distract you. It reassures you that even here, even now, people found ways to care for themselves and each other. You let your thoughts loosen and drift. The night continues its slow passage. Stone holds its chisel and chill. Warmth is guarded where it can be found, and within that balance you rest once more, carried forward by patience and quiet endurance. You never quite forget where you are, even as sleep pulls at you again. The castle does not allow that. Somewhere beneath the quiet there is a constant awareness that this place exists to be ready even in winter, even at night. Cold does not cancel responsibility, it only makes it heavier. A guard passes, again slower, now careful with each step. You hear the faint scrape of leather, the soft knock of metal against stone. Weapons are kept close, not because danger is expected tonight, but because readiness is a habit that does not pause for weather. The cold makes hand-stiff reactions slower, so everything is done with more intention. You imagine the guard pausing near a doorway, leaning slightly into the wall, letting stone take some of the strain. Fingers flex inside gloves. Breath clouds briefly, then disappears. Standing still too long invites numbness, but pacing wastes energy. Balance is learned through long practice. Inside the room, sleepers remain here, half alert without meaning to be. Winter nights teach the body to rest lightly. Any unusual sound slips through sleep more easily. A dropped object, a sudden voice, even the shift of wind can pull you back toward awareness. Defense does not sleep deeply here. You adjust your position again, aware of how quickly the cold returns when you move. The lesson repeats endlessly. Move only when needed. Stay contained. Let warmth build, then guard it. These habits serve more than comfort. They preserve strength. There are moments when winter becomes an ally rather than an enemy. Snow muffles footsteps outside. Cold discourages travel. Attacks grow less likely when roads freeze and supplies thin. The castle feels more isolated but also more secure. You sense that paradox now, the way silence can mean safety. Still no one relaxes fully. Fires are watched. Doors remain barred. Signals are ready even if they are unlikely to be used. The cold does not erase risk, it simply reshapes it. You think of how different this vigilance must feel in summer, when nights are shorter and bodies lighter. Winter compresses everything inward. Effort increases. Mistakes cost more. People adapt by becoming quieter, steadier, more deliberate. Nearby, if someone shifts and sighs, then stills again. Even in sleep, bodies respond to the environment, never fully letting go. You feel that in yourself. Muscles remain slightly tense, prepared to wake if needed. Rest exists on the edge of readiness. Outside the walls, the world is locked in frost. Inside, routines hold. The castle is awake enough to protect itself, asleep enough to endure the night. You are part of that balance now, one body among many resting without surrender. As the hours stretch on, your thoughts thin. Alertness softens into a low hum rather than a sharp edge. You trust the structure, the people, the habits built over generations to hold until dawn. You breathe slowly, letting that trust replace tension. The cold remains constant and patient. So does the castle. Wrapped in stone routine and quiet vigilance, you drift back into sleep, knowing that even in the deepest winter night, readiness never fully fades here. You hear a small sound that does not belong to the wind or the fire. A soft whimper, quickly hushed. It comes from somewhere close to the floor, from a place where blankets are thinner and bodies smaller. Children do not escape the cold simply by being young. If anything, winter finds them faster. They sleep closer together than adults do, tangled without concern for personal space. Limbs overlap. Heads rest wherever they land. Someone older has arranged them this way, deliberately knowing that shared warmth matters more than comfort or order. You can see it in how carefully the coverings are tucked, how extra cloth has been folded and layered to seal in heat. Their breathing is uneven, sometimes shallow, sometimes deep, changing with dreams you cannot see. Small jets rise and fall more quickly. Cold makes their sleep restless. They shift often, seeking warmth, instinctively curling inward when the air grows sharper. You notice how adults nearby remain half aware of them. Even asleep there is a quiet attentiveness. A hand reaches out now and then to pull a blanket higher. A body shifts slightly to block a draft. These movements happen without fully waking, guided by habit rather than thought. Children wear more layers than they did during the day. Sleeves are long hoods pulled low. Clothing handed down from others hangs loose, creating pockets where warmth can gather. It looks awkward, but it works. Practicality overrides appearance here. There are mentions scattered through household notes about special care taken during winter nights, extra bread saved, a warmer place by the fire when possible, someone assigned to check coverings before sleep. These details are rarely emphasized, but they appear often enough to matter. You sense how fragile warmth feels around smaller bodies. What an adult might endure with gritted teeth could overwhelm a child quickly. People understand this without needing explanation. Winter sharpens protective instincts. One child stirs again, murmuring softly, then settles as another presses closer. The sound fades. The room breathes together for a moment, a cluster of warmth within the larger cold. The castle feels different when you notice this. Less abstract, less about stone and defence, more about people enduring the same night in different ways. Children do not frame the cold as something to conquer or accept. They simply react to it moment by moment. You lie still, careful not to disturb the fragile arrangement. The fire offers little now. Shared warmth does most of the work. Cloth, bodies, habit, the simplest tools prove the most reliable. Sleep returns again, quieter this time. The sounds around you soften. Breathing steadies. Even the restless movements of children, slow as warmth, holds long enough to let them rest. The night continues its slow passage. Winter remains present, firm and unyielding. Inside the castle, small adjustments and watchful care make the difference between suffering and survival. Wrapped in the hearth awareness, you drift again, waiting patiently for the hours to pass. The night feels different now, not colder exactly, but settled in a deeper way. Your body has learned its shape. Muscles know where to rest. Breathing has found a rhythm that wastes nothing. This is the part of winter night where resistance gives way to routine, where survival becomes less effort and more habit. You sense it in the stillness around you. Earlier people shifted, often testing positions, guarding warmth anxiously. Now movement is rare. Everyone seems to have found the least uncomfortable arrangement available to them. Cloaks stay tucked, blankets remain in place. Even the animals lie heavy and unmoving, their warmth fully claimed. Time stretches oddly here. Without bells or light, the night is measured by sensations instead. The ache in your joints fades slightly. The cold in your feet dulls into something you barely register. Your thoughts slow and drift, no longer chasing solutions, but accepting the limits of the moment. This is not surrender, it is adjustment. You realize that people who live this way learn to stop fighting the night hour by hour. They prepare for it instead. Meals eaten at the right time, fires banked carefully, bedding arranged just so. These decisions matter more than strength or stubbornness. You remember how the room felt when evening first fell. Drafty, exposed. Now it feels smaller, more contained. Not because the walls were moved, but because your awareness narrowed. The cold still exists, but it no longer demands your full attention. It has become background. Somewhere nearby, someone snores softly, then stops. Another person sighs in their sleep. These sounds rise and fall gently, like waves too small to disturb you. They remind you that the night is shared, that endurance here is collective, even when experienced alone. You adjust your hands, slightly pressing them against your chest. The warmth there is steady now, reliable. Earlier it felt fragile, easily lost. Now it feels earned. Your body has invested hours into building it, and it resists giving it up. The fire is little more than a memory at this point. Embers glow faintly, casting just enough light to outline shapes. No one moves to feed it. This is intentional. Fuel saved now means warmth later. People know when to let the fire go and when to keep it alive. The air smells settled too. Less sharp smoke. More wool and straw. Human presence layered, thick enough to soften the cold. It is not fresh, but it is stable. Stability matters more than comfort at this hour. You think briefly of how these nights repeat not just once or twice, but week after week through winter. This repetition shapes people. It teaches patience. It rewards those who notice small changes and respond quietly. Those who fight it burn energy too fast. Sleep comes and goes in long, gentle waves now. You drift under surface briefly, then sink again. Each return feels easier. Your body trusts that it will not freeze in the next few minutes. That trust allows rest. Outside winter continues its work without pause. Snow settles, wind shifts, frost deepens. Inside the castle holds steady, not warm but lived in. That distinction feels important. Warmth is temporary, habit endures. You become aware of how little you are thinking now. Thoughts dissolve before they finish forming. Sensations blur together. Cold cloth breath wait. None demand interpretation. More, this is how people last through winter nights. Not by conquering the cold, but by letting it exist without letting it consume them. By shaping their lives around it until it becomes familiar enough to ignore. Your breathing slows further. The animal beside you shifts once, then stills again. Someone nearby turns over carefully, then settles. The room remains intact, each person holding their place. You feel yourself sinking deeper, not into unconsciousness exactly, but into a state where time loses its edges. Morning will come eventually. You do not need to watch for it. The night will carry itself forward without your effort. Wrapped in cloth habit and shared endurance, you let go a little more. The castle remains cold. Winter remains present. But you have learned how to be here, and that knowledge is enough to carry you onward as sleep deepens once again. You sense the difference in the air before you can explain it. It is not the kind of cold that bites suddenly. It is the kind that settles slowly, shaped by geography as much as weather. Castles in warmer lands still grow cold at night, but the cold behaves differently. They're less brutal, more lingering. You imagine stone walls under a milder sky, still holding chill after sunset, still drawing warmth away from bodies that rest too close. Even where winters are short, nights inside castles remain unforgiving. Stone does not care about latitude. Once it cools completely. In these regions, people rely less on heavy furs and more on layers of cloth. Wool replaces hide, linen is doubled instead of discarded. Fires burn smaller but more often coaxed rather than fed. The cold arrives quietly here, sneaking in rather than announcing itself. You picture shutters closed against a dry night breeze, not snow but wind that slips easily through narrow gaps. The draft feels cleaner, somehow less damp, but no less persistent. It moves along floors and walls just the same, finding ankles, wrists, necks. Beds are still placed away from outer walls, curtains are still drawn, bodies still cluster together when night deepens. Geography changes the intensity, not the strategy. Warmth is still something gathered carefully and guarded. You recall how food tastes different in these places. Less heavy fat, more oil, still filling, still warming in its own way. The body adapts to what is available, learning how to draw heat from different sources. The principle remains unchanged. In castles closer to the sea, moisture adds another layer. The cold feels softer but deeper, settling into clothing and refusing to leave. Wool becomes essential not just for warmth, but for its ability to hold heat even when damp. People learn to avoid cottons and lighter fabrics at night, even when the air feels mild. You feel how this kind of cold works its way into bones slowly, unnoticed at first. It is easier to underestimate, easier to stay still too long and realize too late that warmth has drained away. Experience teaches caution. Even in regions where frost is rare, people sleep fully covered, feet tucked, heads wrapped, breath warmed before it escapes. Habits do not change easily once learned, especially when they protect against discomfort. You imagine the castle in such a place, quieter at night, less battered by wind, but no less vigilant. Guards still pace slowly, fires still glow for you faintly, sleep still remains shallow, shaped by awareness rather than ease. The idea of a warm castle night begins to feel like a myth. No matter the climate, stone demands respect. It stores the day and releases it grudgingly, if at all. People adjust not to the season alone, but to the material that surrounds them. You breathe steadily, letting the thought pass. Wherever the castle stands, the night teaches the same lesson. Warmth is temporary, preparation lasts longer. Your body remains curled, conserving heat, responding to conditions learned through repetition. Geography fades into background understanding. What matters is the present moment. Breath, cloth, stillness. Sleep settles again, carrying with it the sense that this experience stretches far beyond one place. Across regions and centuries, people lie awake inside stone walls, learning the same quiet strategies night after night, waiting for morning in different kinds of cold that all feel familiar once the lights go out. The night thins without announcing itself. There is no clear moment when it begins to loosen its grip, only a subtle shift that you feel before you see. The cold is still there, steady and unmoved, but something about it feels less final. Now, less heavy than it did hours ago. You become aware of your own breathing again, slower and deeper than before. Each breath warms the air inside your coverings before slipping away. Your body has learned exactly how little movement it needs to stay comfortable enough. Too much would waste heat. Too little would invite stiffness. You rest in the narrow space between. Time feels strange here. You could not say how long you have been awake or asleep. Minutes stretch, hours fold in on themselves. The night is measured by sensations rather than clocks. The dull ache in your joints eases slightly. The tightness in your shoulders softens. These changes arrive quietly, like mercy offered, without explanation. Someone nearby shifts carefully, then stills again. Another person exhales in a long, tired breath. Even the animals seem heavier now, their warmth fully settled, no longer adjusting or searching. Everything in the room feels weighted, anchored, as if the cold has pressed it into place. This is the part of the night where endurance shows itself, not in dramatic ways, but in the simple fact that you are still here, still breathing, still warm enough to rest. Earlier the cold demanded attention, now it waits patient, as if satisfied with what it has already taken. You pull your cloak closer around your shoulders, a reflex more than a decision. The fabric feels familiar, shaped by your body after hours of use. It no longer scratches or shifts. It has become part of how you occupy space. The fire is almost gone now. Just a faint glow remains, more memory than heat. No one rises to tend it. This too is deliberate. Morning is close enough that fuel is saved. The castle knows how to pace itself through the night. Your thoughts wander briefly, then fade before they can settle on anything specific. Planning belongs to daylight. Night is for waiting. You let the stillness do its work, carrying you forward without effort. The cold continues to exist, but it no longer feels like something to struggle against. It has been negotiated with, accommodated, woven into the way you lie and breathe. This acceptance brings a quiet relief. Fighting would only exhaust you now. Somewhere deep in this castle, stone shifts faintly as temperatures change. You feel it more than hear it, a subtle tightening then release. The building responds to the approaching morning in ways you cannot see, just as your body does. Sleep returns in longer stretches now. When you surface, it is only briefly enough to adjust a hand or shift your weight slightly. Each time it is easier to sink back down. The night no longer resists you. You sense that dawn will come not with warmth, but with light. That knowledge is enough. Morning does not need to be comfortable to be welcome. It only needs to arrive. You breathe slowly, deeply, letting the final hours pass without counting them. Around you, the room holds together a collection of bodies and habits that have carried themselves through the cold. Wrapped in cloth and patience, you rest in this quiet interval, suspended between the hardest part of the night and whatever the day will bring, knowing that you have already done the most important thing. You have endured until now. You wake to a faint change that is more felt than seen. The dark is still present, thick and familiar, but it no longer presses as hard as it did. Somewhere beyond the walls, the night has begun to thin. The cold remains settled deep into stone and floor, yet it feels less aggressive now, less intent on proving itself. Your body notices first. Muscles that have spent hours clenched begin to loosen without being asked. Breathing deepens. The tight curl you held through the darkest stretch relaxes just a little enough to remind you that movement is possible again. You do not move yet. You simply recognize the option. The air feels different too. Not warmer exactly, but calmer. Drafts that once slipped and searched now seem to pause as if unsure where to go. The castle holds its breath in a new way. Sounds that felt sharp at layer now land softly absorbed rather than echoed. You become aware of a faint greyness behind your closed eyes. It is not light yet, just the absence of complete black. Your mind registers it without forming a thought. Morning is not here, but it is no longer impossible. Around you, the room begins to stir in the smallest ways. Someone shifts and resettles. Another person exhales in a long, slow breath, the kind that belongs to deeper rest. Even the animals seem to adjust, stretching subtly before sinking back into stillness. These movements ripple quietly through the space, barely disturbing the warmth that has been so carefully guarded. The fire is gone now. What remains is a dark shape where it once glowed, outlined faintly by the changing light. You do not miss it the way you did earlier. Its absence feels expected, appropriate for this hour. Heat from flame belongs to the middle of the night. This time belongs to waiting. Stone responds slowly to the coming day. You can feel it beneath you, still cold, still holding on to the night with stubborn loyalty. That will not change for hours yet. Even when the sun rises, the castle will stay chilled, reluctant to release what it has gathered. You know this without thinking about it. Experience has already taught you. Your hands feel less stiff now. You flex your fingers gently inside the folds of cloth, testing sensation. Feeling returns gradually, not all at once. There is a mild ache, then relief, then a comfortable heaviness. You tuck your hands back into place, satisfied. Time becomes harder to measure here. Without fire or darkness to mark it, the hours blur together. You are aware only that you have made it through the most demanding part of the night. What remains feels manageable even if it is still uncomfortable. You listen. The castle sounds different at this hour. The deep quiet of night has softened into something looser. A distant creak travels through the stone as temperatures shift. Somewhere far away a door settles in its frame. These sounds do not startle you. They feel like signs of continuity rather than interruption. Your thoughts drift briefly then dissolve. There is nothing you need to plan yet. Rising too early would expose you to cold unnecessarily. Remaining still makes sense. You stay where you are, letting warmth hold as long as it can. Breath moves easily now, no longer shallow or guarded. You no longer feel the need to protect each inhale. The air still tastes of soak and wool, but it feels less heavy in your chest. Whatever irritation lingered earlier has eased into the background. Nearby someone sits up slowly, then pauses, clearly reconsidering. The movement sends a small wave of cold outward, quickly contained. They lie back down again, choosing patience. The decision feels wise. Morning will arrive soon enough. The faint grey behind your eyes grows a shade lighter. You open them briefly and see shapes instead of shadows. Beams, hanging fabric, the outline of bodies resting where they fell hours earlier. Everything looks softer now, edges less sharp, as if the castle itself is waking gently. You notice how the cold has changed character. It no longer feels like an opponent. It feels like an environment. Something to exist within rather than push against. This shift brings a quiet sense of success. You did not conquer the night. You lasted through it. Your breathing syncs again with the room. Inhale, exhale. The rhythm feels shared, almost communal. The hardest work is done. What remains is simply waiting for the day to take over. The animal beside you stirs and stretches, pressing briefly against your leg before settling again. Its warmth feels familiar, reassuring. You return the pressure without moving, acknowledging the presence with stillness. Light continues its slow approach. It does not rush. It does not flood. It arrives the way everything else has tonight, gradually, patiently respecting the weight of stone and habit. You remain wrapped, cocooned, unwilling to disturb what you have built. Cold still waits just beyond your coverings, but you're no longer worried about it. You know how to meet it now. You have already done so. As the room brightens just enough to confirm that the night is ending, you allow yourself to rest fully, not sleeping deeply, not waking completely suspended at the narrow, gentle space between. Morning will ask things of you soon. Movement, endurance, another negotiation with the cold. But for now, you stay exactly where you are, breathing steadily, letting the castle shift around you, content in the knowledge that the longest hours are behind you. You wake more fully now, not because you want to, but because the space itself has changed. Light has finally found its way inside thin and pale, slipping through cracks and narrow openings that seemed invisible during the night. It does not warm anything it touches, it only reveals. The castle looks different in this light. Stone shows its texture, every uneven surface softened by grey morning. Breath no longer fogs the air as sharply, though the cold remains firm. It has not gone anywhere. It simply waits quieter, now less demanding. You stretch slightly and feel how the night has settled into your body. Muscles respond slowly, stiff but intact. Joints complain briefly, then fall silent. You're aware of how long you remained still, how much effort that stillness required. Rising too quickly would undo that work, so you move in small stages. Around you, others begin to wake in the same careful way. No one leaps to their feet. People sit up slowly, testing balance, rubbing hands together, pulling layers tighter before exposing themselves to open air. The night taught patience. Morning respects it. The smell of the room feels different now. Smoke lingers, but it has thinned. Wool and straw dominate instead. Daylight makes these scents clearer without making them unpleasant. They feel honest, evidence of bodies that endured the same hours you did. You notice how the cold feels sharper again once movement begins. Stillness allowed warmth to accumulate. Motion releases it. People respond instinctively, staying bundled, delaying unnecessary tasks. Even speech is measured. Words emerge quietly, conserving breath. Somewhere nearby, a fire is coaxed back to life. The sound is small but hopeful. A faint crackle, a shift in the air. The warmth it promises is still far away, but the intention alone changes the mood of the room. The night is over. Preparation begins again. You see how the floor glistens faintly in the new light moisture pulled from stone by the night's cold. Footsteps avoid certain patches without comment. Everyone remembers where the stone bites hardest. The children stir next, blinking disoriented, then drawn immediately toward warmth and familiarity. They move toward adults without thinking, pulled by instinct rather than instruction. Arms open, cloaks shift. The room reorganizes itself around care. Animals rise as well, stretching with exaggerated slowness before shaking themselves awake. Their warmth leaves you briefly replaced by a sharper chill, but you accept it. Day has different rules. Stillness is no longer the safest choice. You sit up fully now, feeling the weight of your clothing. It is heavier in daylight, stiff with smoke and use. You will keep it on for hours yet. There is no rush to change. Warmth comes first. Light continues to grow, revealing more of the room. Tapestries hang quietly. Bedding lies rumpled where the night shaped it. Nothing feels dramatic. The morning does not announce itself, it simply takes over. You breathe in and out, grounding yourself in the present. The worst of the night is finished. What remains is manageable. Cold will persist, but it will be met with movement, fire, and food soon enough. For now, you remain where you are, awake, but unhurried, letting the day build slowly around you. The castle has carried you through another night. You have learned again how to live inside it. You do not rush to stand. Even now, with morning clearly present, the cold still asks to be treated carefully. Stone has not forgotten the night yet. Floors remain hard and unwelcoming. Walls still hold the chill they gathered hour by hour. Daylight changes what you see long before it changes what you feel. You sit quietly, letting the room wake around you. Fires grow stronger, fed with intention rather than desperation. The crackle sounds healthier now, more confident. Warmth will come, but it will arrive slowly the way it always does here. People begin their morning routines without speaking much. Movements are economical. Cloaks are adjusted rather than removed. Hands are rubbed together until blood returns. Someone pours a small cup of something warm and passes it along. The night may be over, but its lessons linger. You look around and understand something clearly for the first time. Castles were never meant to be comfortable places. They were meant to endure. Everything inside them reflects that purpose. The cold is not a failure of design. It is a consequence of priorities that valued defense, permanence, and power over ease. You think back through the night you have just lived. The layers of clothing, the shared warmth, the animals pressed close, the curtains drawn tight, the careful placement of beds and bodies. None of it was accidental. These were adaptations built quietly over generations, shaped by trial, discomfort, and survival. Stone magnified the cold rather than blocking it. Vast rooms lost heat faster than small ones. High ceilings swallowed warmth and returned silence instead. Compared to simpler homes built of wood or earth, castles often felt harsher in winter despite their grandeur. You understand now why people sometimes slept better in humbler places, yet people lived here anyway. They raised children, held feasts, governed lands, planned wars and peace treaties. The cold did not stop life, it shaped it. You feel a strange respect for that endurance, not the dramatic kind, but the quiet, repetitive kind that shows up every night and does what is required. Adjusting layers, banking fires, staying still when stillness matters, waking when needed, resting when allowed. As you finally rise carefully, you feel the night leave your body in stages. Stiffness fades, breath deepens. The ache in your joints eases as warmth slowly returns. The castle does not suddenly become friendly, but it becomes workable again. You take a last look at the room before stepping fully into the day. Bedding lies where people made it work. Tapestries hang patiently, straw is flattened where bodies rested longest. Nothing here looks luxurious in the morning light. It looks used, and that feels right. The coldest hours are over. The castle remains cold but survivable. You have learned how people endured nights like this, not through comfort, but through knowledge, habit, and cooperation. Now as the day takes hold, the night loosens its grip entirely. The pace slows, words soften, movements grow less unguarded. Fires brighten, the cold retreats just enough to make effort possible again. You carry the memory of the night with you, not as hardship, but as understanding. And as your breathing steadies and your body settles into the rhythm of morning, the story begins to fade just as it should. The stone walls remain, the cold waits for night, and you for now are safe to rest.